Good morning, everybody. This is Dale Fye, and I'm the chapter president of the Access Users Group Eastern Time chapter. Today, I'm going to be talking about working with Excel data in Access applications. Again, I'm Dale Fye. I'm the owner of Developing Solutions, LLC. I was an Access MVP from 2013 through 16, and my website is there, shown there on the screen. Okay, today's agenda. We're going to start out with why I dislike hate working with Excel data. Then we're going to talk about linking or importing a little bit, mostly linking. Then I'm going to talk about how you can add a unique column to your worksheets, how I do error checking within my applications, how I check for column name mismatches between the Excel data and Access, and then how I import the staging table. So why do I dislike working with Excel? The wizard when dealing with Excel is significantly limited. It doesn't allow you to find column data types. It automatically assigns column data types, so you can't do that. It doesn't allow you to reject individual columns. And it doesn't allow you to find column data types either. They automatically are assigned generally based on the top 25 rows, and it also depends on the connection string you use to connect to Excel. So that can be different anyway. Data is frequently not normalized. When I take over an application or start working with a company that is currently using Excel spreadsheets, what I frequently find is non-normalized data. I find column headings that have a date or a month. I'll have 3 or 4 different phone numbers listed on a contact on the right. So it's not normalized, which means you have to deal with that the normalization problem. Excel allows users to put anything they want anywhere they want. Now, if the developer of an Excel spreadsheet sets it up so that they have drop downs in some of the columns to allow them to select from a lookup list, that can improve the chances that you're going to get data that actually matches what you need. But frequently, you'll have people who type into a cell, type a alphanumeric character into what should be a numeric cell, or those types of things. And then users frequently move they'll shift columns or even change column names to match what they want it to read rather than what the creator of the spreadsheet wanted them to use. Another one, data is not editable. Once you link it to Access, you can't edit it. Now, there is a neat little technique that Colin Riddington told me about the other day that I have been playing around with, but have not had a chance to implement it in any of my applications. But it could be a game changer for the way I do things with Excel. And then the other thing is that when you're working with Excel and Access and you're doing Excel automation, it's really easy to leave Excel open in the task manager where you can't see it. So there's an instance of Excel running, or in many cases, multiple instances of Excel running in the background where you can't see it on your screen. And the only way to get rid of it is through the task manager. So those are some of the main reasons I dislike working with Excel. Does anybody have any other comments regarding their reasons for not liking to work with Excel? All right, none. Okay, linking or importing. I generally choose linking, basically because there's not much you can do with an imported table that you can't do with a linked table except edit the data directly. And the advantage of linking is that it doesn't create a bloat in your database when you have to when you import the data and then work with it and then delete it, you have bloated your database, which means you need to do a compact and repair to get rid of that bloat. So I prefer to just link the data to the data initially, and then I work with it as a linked table rather than as a source table. Things I use to get there, to get that file linked, is a little simple procedure called get file, which is really just calls the file dialog. I wrote an Excel linker app, and then we'll talk about Colin's trick as well, because that's going to be that I really think could significantly change the way I do business with Excel moving forward in the future. Okay, so the first thing you have to do to work with an Excel file is you're going to have to select the file. Now, you can use if you're doing this in design view, then you don't need a functionality like this to do that. You just simply use the export wizard or the import wizard to identify the table and link it. But if you're doing it in your application, you have to provide the user with a mechanism to identify what worksheet they want to work with. What I've done with a number of my apps is created a feature that looks somewhat like this, where this pop-up window shows up. The user indicates whether they want to select an existing workbook or whether they want to create a new one. They use the browse button over on the right-hand side over here. I don't know, can you guys see my pointer? They use the browse button to open the file dialog box.
I cannot see your pointer.
Okay, and I don't know. I mean, I can see it showing up on my WebEx interface, but
did you share your screen or did you share your PowerPoint?
I shared the screen.
Okay.
So it should be showing
now
up, and I see it.
Now I see it
now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you click the browse button here on the upper right hand corner, and it launches that get file application, which opens up the file dialog box and lets you either select an existing workbook or select the folder you want to put it in and type in the name of the file that you want to use and when you hit OK, it returns that file name to this app. It then opens that spreadsheet or that workbook in using Excel automation and catalogs the names of all the worksheets in that application and puts them in this drop down, so you can pick a particular drop down you want. And then if you're using a new workbook, and usually here in this drop down, I will list the existing, plus I'll add an option that says new worksheet at end of existing sheets. And if you select that option, then you enter a tab name that you want to give it over here, and then you hit select. So that's how this particular structure works, and that's how I select the file using this app. But there's a problem with that. And here's what my get file function looks like. It just basically calls the file dialog. You pass in a title if you want to. You pass in a default string. You indicate the file type and whether or not you want to select multiple files. And then the code down here looks to see what type of file you want to look for and adds the appropriate filters to the file dialog. And over here, it assigns the allow multi-select property, and then it just pops it up and then returns the values. So it's a pretty simple function. Most of you probably have a similar function that we use. Once you've selected the file, there's a couple ways to link to the file. One is using the transfer spreadsheet method, and the other is using the create table def technique. I prefer to use the create table def version because when you do the transfer spreadsheet option, it always makes the navigation pane visible, which means you then have to hide it again if it was hidden. Whereas with Create Table Depth, it does not do that. So I found a long time ago that Create Table Depth just works better for me. In my code example here, or in my code example here at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that I used Excel 12. That's because I'm currently, the machine I develop on right now is mostly Access 2007, because I still have clients that are using various versions of 7, 10, and 13. So the easiest one to work on and the most reliable to move forward is 7. So that's what I work in most of the time. But you could modify this string down here where it says Excel 12 to just say Excel, and then you could put a quote there and an ampersand, and then do access.version, and then close it and then extend the string out with another quote, etc. That assumes that the Access version you're working with is the same as your Excel version, which may not be the case. Okay, like I was saying, the problem with that method is that it won't let you. It's not going to let you open existing files. Files that are already open in Excel. What I wanted to be able to do was, if there's if perhaps I've got Excel open on one screen, and I want to link to that table, or I want to link to a spreadsheet in that workbook, but I may have multiple workbooks open, or instances of Excel open, and the get object feature of Access will only reach out and touch the first instance of Excel that was opened during a given session. So if you've got multiple instances of Excel running, it won't do that for you. So I created an Excel linker tool. It's just a form with a bunch of code behind it, and what it does is it first goes out and looks for open instances of Excel, catalogs those, and automatically gets the names of the worksheets that are associated with those, so that I actually can pick one that's already selected, already open. The code behind that is rather extensive and painful, but it's in the sample app that I'm going to post if you want to dig down into it. But the nice thing is that it will let you do multiple instances, and from there it'll let you select any worksheet or a range, which is not an option that you have, using that. I guess theoretically you could, on that pop-up form that I showed you previously, you could add a text box that says, is identified as range, and you can type in B2 through F6 or something. But unless you know the names of the defined range, the named ranges, you're going to be stuck trying to find those or type those in manually. Whereas this app will actually show those for you when they're open. So let me go ahead and pop up my app here real quick. I'm going to minimize this. Let's back that up. And I'm going to pull up this app. So I've got a little Access app here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open Excel and open up a couple of spreadsheets I've got, a couple of workbooks I've got, just so that you can see what I was talking about with regard to how that linker works. So that's one instance of Excel. Now, in order to open a second one, I need to launch Excel again, and then rather than from within that one, I've got to do it externally. didn't find that one. Let's do this one. Let's go to. This is the spreadsheet we're going to look at anyway. So I'll open both of those so that we can see that. So now you can see that we've got two open. So now when I click on my browse window to pick the file name, it automatically finds the two instances of Excel that are open. And one of them has a workbook named utilization. The other one has a workbook named data. If I pick that and hit selected, it shows me the worksheets that are in there. And if there are any range names, it'll show me those as well. In this case, there aren't. If I pick this one and select it, it'll show me the two data set or worksheets that are there. If I pick selected, it allows me to define how I want to link to that file. And if I give it a name that already exists over here, it's going to ask me if I want to delete it, if it exists or not. I've got to provide an answer to that before I can link it. I'm going to go back here real quick because what I want to link to is this one. Actually, I want to close this. I'll cancel that. Then I'm going to close the Excel files to start with here. So all right, so now I'm going to go back and do that again. Now I don't have any instances listed because there's nothing. Excel is not open. Now if I browse to that file I was working with, and I'll select that. I want to work with sheet 1, selected. I'm going to call this Excel worksheet. And you'll see that name matches this name here over in the nav pane. So it asks me if I want to delete it. I say yes, and then I link to it. Okay, so now I'm linked to sheet 1 in that workbook, and I can review my data. This is a simple. Basically, what I do with this is I just assign the data source of this. I'm sorry, I assign the source object of this subform as the table, as this linked table, and the syntax for that is just me subform name dot source object equals, and then if you want to assign it to something other than a form, you have to indicate the type of object. So you just say table dot and then the name of the table, and that's how you assign the this table as that source. Now, once I've linked to this and I get a chance and I can actually look at the data, I can see that it doesn't have an identity column. This might be an identity column, but I'm guessing that it's not an identity. So I can add my own ID column merely by clicking on Add ID. And what it's going to do is it's going to add that column to Excel using Access Automation or Excel Automation. It opens up the file, inserts a column as the far left column, and just adds, inserts numeric values 1 through n to assign with each of those rows. Pretty simple. And then it closes the table again, refreshes this spreadsheet or this linked table, because you have to refresh it in order to get that column to show up, and then it reassigns the source object of this subform back to that linked table again. Okay, the next step is I check for errors. And in this case, I looked for two things. And my check error code is pretty simple. Let me see if I can pull that up. I forgot to have my code window open, and it takes a while to load. There we go. So I have two functions. I want to check this for the grade number is numeric, and I want to check for a valid email. So the code behind those is relatively simple. I have a table in my database called Table Excel Error Log, which basically I just insert values and I do a select statement from my linked table, and I'm going to insert values into that table for where the value in the grade field is not numeric. Now, in some of the apps I've written, I've made this a little bit more generic so that I can actually pick the column I want to do stuff for on the fly, or I can pass it multiple column names. But for this example, I just went with a hard-coded the grade field that we're going to use for that piece of it. So, and then the similar code, sorry about that, similar code for the check valid email. And all I did for the valid email, I didn't look for anything special. I just wanted to look for, as I browsed through it, I saw there were some that didn't have an @ sign in the email. So I used that as my criteria, just looking for the @ symbol. You could probably use a regex expression in here to make it more, to give yourself a little bit more robust email checker. But this was just a real simple example for this meeting. So what those two queries do, or what those two functions do, is they add data to this error log table, which shows me that there were 2 records where there's an invalid grade and a bunch where there's an invalid email. And when I come down here, I can actually, after I've done that, if there were any errors, I have a review errors button, which pops that up and shows me what those the two fields that contained errors were for each of the clients that had an error. Now, with the code with the query that Colin Riddington showed me that I'm going to discuss a little bit later, I would actually be able to edit this right here in this this query that I'm showing you here. At the moment, we're stuck with the not being able to edit Excel linked tables based on the lawsuit that was done back in like 2002, I think it was, which I think 2003 is when they disabled that feature. Prior to that, we were able to edit Excel tables directly from within Access. Since then, we haven't been able to, but this technique that Colin mentions works all the way back to 2007, and I haven't tested it in 2003, so I don't know whether it works there as well, but it might. And that would change this. So I could go in here and I could say, oh, well, look, we got a Daniel Page. I could just change his grade right here and resolve that error problem. But at the moment I can't. So what I normally do is I provide a way for the users to either print this out so they can go back and fix the data, or they could just close the application at this point, go back, fix the data, and then do a relink to it and check it again. But anyway, this is how I test for invalid data and how I display that information for the users. The next step, if I'm going to do an import, I want to make sure I've got the right columns. Now, I've done this a number of ways over the years. Let me go back over and look at that. Look at my my briefing here. Okay, so we've added a unique column. We're done the error checking. Now we're checking for column name mismatches. Okay, so in in the column name issue, what you basically you either you want to make sure that the column names match, or that at least you have some way to match the existing column name up into the column names that you're going to use, that you're using in your tables. So I've done that a number of ways over the years. One way is just to run through the list of expected column names. If they're not found in the source spreadsheet, then I pop up a message and say, hey, these column names do not match the column names that are needed in the application. Please fix these, and then I basically create a little report for them to print, so they can print that out and have those names as they go fix it. Another way I've done it in the past is to actually list the column names in my target data file or table, and the column names in the other, and I actually create a joining table that allows you to assign column names to one another where the names don't match already. What I did in this particular example was something slightly different. Let me minimize this again. So what I did here was I basically created a little subroutine that documents the column names and the data types in each of those columns in the two tables, the staging table here and the linked table here. I pass in those two table names. It builds this table with the field names and the data types, and then returns this information to me in a spreadsheet, showing me the column names, how they exist in each of the two tables. And what I can see here is that I've got in the Excel worksheet, I've got field 1 and field 2 that are not matched up with anything in my staging table. And in my staging table, I have a couple of fields here which are not matched up. In this particular example database, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to be able to do the import until all my fields match. But one way to do this would be to have a checkbox that indicates you want to actually link, join these two tables, or you want to include specific fields in your upload and exclude others. You could do that as well. In this particular case, what I want to do is I want to match these up. In field 1, when I click on field 1, because there's an entry here and not over here, it enables this change header button. So when I change header, it just asks me what the new field name is, and in this case, I want it to match up with zip code. So I just type that in, and it goes out using automation. It updates the spreadsheet, adds that, it changes the field name or the column header from field 1 to zip code. And we're going to do the same thing here for field 2. And we're going to make this temp 2. Okay, so now we have a set of fields where all of the columns are the same. Now, what's interesting here is that my import to staging table button is not enabled. So we're going to cheat here. The code behind the compare change header button is supposed to check to see whether there are any mismatches, and if not, then it's supposed to enable this. But we'll go out. We'll go out here and look. Make sure I've got the command stage. Okay. Nothing like cheating. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to do the import. And what it basically does is it goes out and creates a SQL string that does an insert into the staging table and then it creates this string of fields, and then it does a select statement that says select from the source table, and then it does two things. It checks to see whether, in this particular case, the ID column. Now, in my production apps, usually I don't assume that the primary key is called ID. I provide a way for the user to identify that primary key, or in some cases, if I'm linking to Access, it's not an issue. But with Excel, you can't be sure that what the primary key is, the field name is. So I would normally have them identify what the primary key is in some method. And then I check to see whether that, I don't want to insert any new records into the staging table if they already exist. So I do a left join between the worksheet and the staging table, and only select those that don't match, where there isn't a record in staging table. And then I also included in join a link to the error log, because I don't want to import any records that have errors in them. So the code behind that starts out with just a simple, check to see whether or not there's any tables, and it reminds you, it says errors with records won't be uploaded. And when you say okay, it goes ahead and builds that update, insert query, and does the insert, runs the insert, and then again it changes the source of this from table Excel worksheet. Now the source down here is table Excel staging, and you can see the records are all here in the staging table. I've only got 261 records here, whereas I have 270 over here. So I've got 9 records that were not imported for some reason. These are those records. In fact, one of these looks like it's duplicated. Yeah, record number 34 had both the email wrong and a grade wrong. So those are the 9 records that were not imported into the staging table. Okay, so the thing I wanted to show, Colin Riddington is I believe he was just made an MVP, or maybe he's been an MVP and is no longer. I don't remember for sure. But we were talking the other day, and he did a presentation for me a couple of months ago, and we were talking about this issue of importing Excel data or linking Excel data and being able to edit it. And he sent me an email that talks about a syntax that he has used. Oops, back that up. Which allows you to edit the resulting table. So now what I want to do is I want to real quickly go out and open up that. Okay, I'm going to minimize this and pull this one over here. Okay, so what I've done is here's the syntax. Here's that syntax that he provided. It's just a simple select statement using the in syntax. Really long file name given how embedded I've got things. But then the tricky part, again, this says Excel 12 because that's what I'm working in 2007. The tricky part here is that it appears that this does not work if you use any other value than 0 for the IMEX value argument in the connection string. But if I open this is linked to that same table we were working with. So what we should see when we open this is we should see that zip code and that temp file name or table names. So you'll see that we added the ID column. We changed field 1 to zip code, and we changed field 2 to temp 2, and now we have this data. So I'm going to go ahead and open that Excel spreadsheet. Darn it, I was afraid of that. Okay. Yes.
Does IMEX 0 mean starts at row 0 or something like that?
No, okay, what did I do here? Oh, my query. That's I don't know exactly what the IMEX stands for or what it does. I'm told that using row. Okay. I don't want help. I'm told that if you use two, Access will do a better job of identifying the type of data that exists in that column. Okay. Let's try that again. Okay, so here's my data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of changes in here to the data. I'm going to change this to Patterson, and I'm going to change him to grade 9, and recognizing that I'm working with a link. Basically, I'm working with a linked table here. So if I open up that Excel file again, okay, it says it's already open. So let's find that Excel file. Okay, here we are. And what you'll see is this went from Pattinson to Patterson, and we changed his grade from 8 to 9. So we did that directly from within Access. Let me try this. Let me try this a different technique here. Close this. Let me open that Excel spreadsheet first. I hate this. I hate it when it does this. Let's close that.
So try a task manager and see if you have Excel open.
That's exactly where I was going.
Yeah, that's what I found. If something fails partway through the first time, sometimes it gets stuck.
Yeah. So we had that Excel file open. So now it still says it's locked, but okay. What I wanted to show you was that, let's close that. So what I did was I made a couple of quick queries. I created a query that changes. That's design view. It's an update query. I set the grade to null for all the records in that table. Okay, so I'm going to run this. That's interesting. Now that table appears to be locked, it's not letting me do that. What is that? Let's see if we can resolve that somehow over here. Look for Excel again. Task Manager. We don't have Excel in the Task Manager. Let me close this. Open this back up. See what it's still saying it's locked by another user. And this is this may be one of the guys on LinkedIn replied to one of my messages asking whether I had figured out how to resolve some of these issues of working with Excel automation. And the answer is yes and no. Cases like this where something goes wrong, we're going to open it up as read only. It's still got the grade in there. Let's close it. We'll go back and try the Task Manager again. And Excel is not open in the Task Manager. So
are you looking only in applications, or are you looking under services as well?
I was looking under services.
Okay.
Or actually under processes. I've never actually looked under services.
Dale?
Yes.
I've only just joined the meeting, so I've missed most of this, but I've just tuned in as you're doing this, my little trick, as you've called it on there.
Yes.
Did you earlier try opening the linked table In other words, is that still active within Access? Because if it is, it's locked it's locked your Excel spreadsheet.
No, I closed that one, but you know what? This is open, so let's close this app, this sample app, because that
Well,
may
I didn't mean services, actually. Sorry, I meant details as opposed to
okay.
processes, because I've seen instances, particular in automation cases, where it leaves something open in details, but you can't see it in processes in Task Manager.
Yeah.
Something
Well,
we've had to deal with a lot in the last couple of weeks with Access, of course.
yeah. Let's try it again. Okay, so here the table opened without being locked. So I'm gonna leave it open in the background here, and then I'm gonna go back out to Colin's linked Excel access application that he sent me, where this is the query. That was the original query. Basically, this query uses that query as its source and does an update to set the grade value to null. And if I run this now, yes, it's updating 270 rows, even though the Excel file is open. I mean, the Excel file is open, and here you've got nulls in that grade column now. If I minimize it again, I've got this other one, which just assigns a random grade to everybody. And when I run it, it's updating 270 records. And when I go to Excel, they're all have new grades assigned, randomly assigned grades. So this is pretty slick. And this, for me, this will be a game changer for the way I do things with regard to working with Excel, because that functionality, being able to actually make the changes there, is pretty cool. Now, one of the things I didn't show over in my other app, that if I do it now, I'm going to have to go through all the steps again. One of the things I didn't show over here when we do the review error.
I'm not able to hear Dale. Am I the only one, or?
No, you're not, Dale. We lost you.
Well, Dale is getting that resolved. Ms. Barnes, I have a question. Just to be clear, I came in late as well. Is the trick linking to Excel and then using a query that enables you to update it?
No, not quite. You linked Excel tables, as you probably are aware, are read-only and have been for 20 odd years. You create a query to the external Excel file. So you don't create a query to the linked table. It must be a query to the external file.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. And that's where you need to use IMEX equals 0 for it to actually be editable. If you use 1 or 2, it's still read-only.
So within the query, it's kind of like going to the SQL and then putting in that statement.
Yeah, because Dale's using the file I sent him, I will put the SQL of that query in the chat window. Oh, I've tried doing it with a CSV file as well, and I haven't mastered that yet. But here, coming up now. By the way, I'm listed as host. I don't know why. So I'm not Dale in disguise here.
No problem.
You're talking to Colin, by the way, the one that has this trick.
Nice to meet you.
Can I just say it didn't originate with me either. Somebody else called Chris Arnold was the one who alerted me. I'd seen it years ago and then forgotten how to do it. But as I say, that's what you do there. So you select whatever fields you want from the Excel table. And then you do, as you can do with external tables, you just then tell it where to find the data. And in my case, it's in this particular location there. It's an Excel 12 file. Headers, yes. And IMEX must be 0.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Right. But as I say, I've tried to get it to work with CSV files, and I haven't yet succeeded. I don't see why they shouldn't work, but I haven't yet managed to do so.
Colin, can you explain anything further about the IMEX and what that means?
Give me 5 minutes because I was going to do that before I started this meeting, and then I forgot all about the meeting. So give me 5 minutes, and I'll try and find it. IMEX 1 is what you need to use if you want to specify the data types. IMEX 0 and 2, I'm less sure about. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, but basically, IMEX, I believe, it tells the driver that you're using to talk how to interpret the data columns.
I'd
It has
agree with
different
that.
levels.
Yeah, that's definitely true. What I'm not sure until I check it. Here we go. Right, this is something I'm reading on. Just on something I just opened a minute ago. IMEX equals, well, refers to import-export mode, but I'm sure that's obvious. 3 possible values. Sorry about the background noise. My dogs are barking. IMEX equals 0 and IMEX equals 2 will result in import mix types being ignored, and the default value of majority types, whatever that is used. Basically, it therefore interprets. Can you hear me all right above my dog barking?
I can't hear your dog at all.
You
Same,
can't hear
Mike.
my dog. God, I'm being
Yeah.
deafened by my Isla. In fact, my dog of the where I got my username from. Right, IMEX equals 1 is the only way to set the value as text. So that's where you specify it. It's not telling me. It's just saying that basically you're allowing access to interpret how to import the data types.